hear me okay, by the way? I didn't
Oh
even
yeah,
ask that.
yeah.
Okay. So
Hi
let me
everybody, this is Bill Soroka, founder of NotaryCoach.com and the Sign and Thrive Notary Training Course and Community. I'm here with Steve Bjorkman, the founder and CEO of NotaryGadget. Steve, welcome.
Thanks, Bill. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you agreed to do this because I think that you fill a very valuable and critical role in the notary business. It's usually the one that most people avoid or kind of put off as much as possible. I mean, who wants to talk about accounting?
Well, it's interesting that you say that too, Bill. It's sort of actually a little bit of a misconception because what Notary Gadget does is actually the byproduct of it is the accounting and being instantly sort of ready for your taxes. But there's a lot of other stuff that it helps you do along the way, and especially for maybe new notaries who are just getting into the business. I think a lot of them, it's really easy to manage your business when you only have maybe one or two signings a month or something like that. But once you start to do any kind of volume where you may be doing 6 or 8 or 10 signings a month and even maybe less than that, you start to see where your system, as everybody calls it, their own system really starts to break down. You start to miss unpaid invoices, and then you're trying to collect stuff that's 60 days out. And you're forgetting to monitor whether you confirmed appointments and that sort of thing. So what Notary Gadget does is actually much more encompassing than accounting, but the main sort of claim to fame and the reason that most people find us is because the accounting byproduct of it.
I love that you brought up the system there because when I first got started at this, my system was a manual system where we were literally, I was printing out in Word template my invoices, putting them in the manila folder on the desk, and I was I'd move it from the paid folder to the unpaid folder. And then you're absolutely right, that's fine when you've got 3 or 4 signings a month. That's no big deal. But as soon as I hit volume, I immediately started falling behind. I had no idea what was going on. And now, even with software, it's hard to track. But back then, it was a mess. And I actually lost a very valuable client that was worth, she was sending me about $1,200 to $1,500 a month in signings. And I couldn't get invoices to her in time. I couldn't do invoices on the road. So I didn't know if she had paid me or not. It was a complete mess. And she was just the type of person that didn't appreciate that. And I lost that business because I was unorganized. So these types of systems are critical.
Yeah, it's huge. It's so funny you talk about the invoicing part of it because that is probably one of the things that Notary Gadget does the best is the invoicing part of it. So like, in your own system, you probably had an invoice template that you did in Excel or Word or something like that. So every time you had a signing, you had to go in there, type in the name of the customer, the order number, the escrow number, all that stuff, put it into your invoicing format, save it as a PDF or maybe even keep it as a Word document, and then email it, open up your email, type out an email, send it off, which, like you said, 3 or 4 signings, no big deal. Take that to 10, 15, 20 signings, it's a whole nother ballgame, right? I mean, that you'll sit down, you'll come home every night, you'll end up doing 2 or 3 hours of just administrative busy work that really is sort of a waste of your time.
Well, and that's the thing, and most people are so exhausted by the time they get at the end of the night that they don't do it, and then that's when things start to spiral, day after day starts building up.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, how does Notary Gadget help a notary overcome that level of overwhelm?
So what Notary Gadget ultimately is we call it the ultimate accounting or the ultimate software for mobile notaries. And that's because what it helps you do is it helps you manage your business as a whole. So it takes some of those big pain points and those big heavy task or heavy manual task items like creating invoices and sending invoices, trying to track your mileage to and from each location, tracking your notarial acts, which I think we're going to talk about later on. And then also at the end of the year, like what do you do now that what most notaries do who aren't using a system of some type is you're going to end up getting a bunch of 1099s at the end of the year. And then you add all those up and you say, okay, I think these are right. And not only do you think they're right, but you go back and you say, okay, so how did I track all of the expenses that I had? And it's not just your hey, I had a FedEx fee, or I had to buy printer paper. And a lot of, another thing that a lot of people try to do is they try to track things like they try to associate a cost with each page that is printed or something like that. They're trying to use that as to tally up their expenses, which we actually can't do, but because that's not the way the IRS can't assign like an amount to it. You have to say, hey, this is my actual cost that I had. So going through and tracking all of those things, and then at the end of the year being able to say, click, print profit and loss report, boom, you can hand it to any accountant or tax preparer, and they have exactly what they need to do your taxes. Along with, like I said earlier, the tracking those notarial acts, and that is probably the biggest thing. Is some people will look at it and say, hey, I love the system, it's great, it helps me all this, helps me do this, helps me do that, it saves me a ton of time, which is what it ultimately does. And then there's others along with that first group that will say, hey, how does this thing save me money? Well, the biggest thing it does is helping you track your notarial acts, and then actually calculating the amount that you're going to be able to deduct on your taxes for tracking those notarial acts.
Yeah, and I think that's huge. And obviously, there's all kinds of benefit to tracking a lot of this to give you data, but a lot of the new notaries and seasoned notaries as well don't understand the impact of tracking each notarial act, even within a loan signing appointment, and then general notary work is obviously general notary work, but on the loan signing side, so what is the benefit of tracking your notarial acts?
Okay, so this is a great question, and it's funny you say that, because I've talked to notaries who've been in the business for 20 years, and they just now realize this. And the crazy part about it too is a lot of accountants don't even know about this, because it's one obscure item that's on your tax return that asks you how much of your net income was from notarial acts. And this great IRS law that was built into the system for notaries is fantastic. So here's the way that it works. Normally what happens is I'll use an example to try to illustrate it. So let's say that you go out and you do a signing for $100. You get paid $100 on a signing. Now, I'm going to forget about any other expenses that you have, but let's just say that you made $100 on that signing. So normally when you report that income, that $100 of income, it's subject to what's called self-employment tax. And self-employment tax is 15.3%. So any income that you bring in is going to be subject to that 15.3%. This is the case for all home-based businesses or sole proprietors, single member LLCs. All of it's subject to that 15.3% tax. Now, what that's designed to replace is, if you're an employee and you go to work and you make $100, so you work $10 an hour times 10 hours, you make $100. What happens is when you get your check, you get, Social Security and Medicare get taken out of your check to the tune of 7.65%. Well, your employer is also required to match that amount. And that's another 7.65%, which if you add up the total of those two, you get 15.3%. And the self-employment tax was designed to replace the taxes that are normally collected if you were an employee. So let's go back to our example. So let's say you go out, you do a signing for $100. So now you have to pay, I'm just going to say 15% to make the numbers easy.
Yeah.
So on $100, you're going to pay 15% in taxes. Which would be $15. So every signing that you go out and you do for $100, you're going to pay $15 in taxes on it. Now, let's see how the notarial acts IRS clause applies. So let's say that you go out and you do that same signing and you do 5 notarial acts. And let's say that in your state, you're allowed to charge a maximum of $10 per notarial act. So now your $50 of that $100 was earned doing notarial acts. So now those notarial acts, according to the IRS publication, are not subject to self-employment tax. So now, instead of paying $15 on that $100 of income in taxes, you're only going to pay $7.50 because half of it was from notarial acts. So now, if you take that and you multiply those numbers real quick, so let's say that you did 100 signings this year. That's $750 in tax savings that you had, and the numbers go up significantly. And I'm sure you would agree. In some states, I think like California, it's like $15. And in many cases, you'll go to a notary packet, and you might have 10, 12 notarizations. So essentially, what happens is a majority of your income ends up being not subject to self-employment tax. So like I said, if you do the math, and I've talked to, tons of our users before, especially some of the ones who are full-time notaries. I mean, they'll get in, they'll literally, and we've even had this conversation, said, oh my God, I haven't been recording this or reporting this the last 10 or 15 years. I said, you may want to go back and file an amended tax return, because you literally are leaving thousands and thousands of dollars on the table that you could instantly gain back. But that's the big, secret sauce of tracking notarial acts that a lot of people don't understand and don't know about. So obviously, NotaryGadget helps you track all those and calculates everything for you in a report, and even outlines it on the profit and loss report. That's so when you hand it to your accountant or tax preparer, it says, hey, they're going to ask, what is this line item that you're talking about? It even tells you what publication to refer to the IRS for it and everything. So,
oh my gosh, that is powerful. And if you are a notary that is full-time, and sometimes, there's some of us out here doing 100, 150 signings a month, the add up on that is just insane. You have to keep track of this. And this was relatively new to me too. I didn't even know about it. So I've already called my CPA and we're preparing the amended returns already, because this is huge and it's significant income. And you bring up the awesome point too, because I really want to talk about the reporting. We're tracking all this data for a reason, right? So what kind of reporting can NotaryGadget help with?
So actually, if you don't mind, let me jump back to another second, because one of the things that we're going to talk about is how this all relates to. We brought up this topic early on about the invoicing thing, because invoicing can be a huge pain, especially if you're trying to do it any sort of manual way. So and this will lead into what I'm ultimately going to get at with the reporting. So one of the things that NotaryGadget does really well is when you enter in the information for a signing, it's going to do a few different things for you. One of them, it's going to automatically generate the invoice instantly. And then the second one is it's going to automatically calculate your mileage back and forth to your home and one way, so that you don't even have to go in and try to calculate it out or go to Google or use a mileage tracker app or anything. It'll already put everything in there. And if you need to stop off at FedEx along the way and it's an extra couple miles, you just add an extra couple miles to it. But the idea is that it takes away all of that manual calculation stuff or even data entry, because it's literally just going to auto-calculate everything for you. Now, once you've completed your signing and you're ready to send the invoice, you just click a button and boom, it automatically generates a PDF invoice, sends everything out for you, automatically generates an invoice number, so you've got some way to track it. And that's where the reporting comes in. So the big things is, first of all, you'll be able to track who's paid you and who has not paid you on every signing. You'll know instantly when a signing is between 15 and 30 days overdue, or when it's 30 days overdue or 60 days overdue. An easy way, so it gives you every time you log in, which, for those who do quite a bit of work, is probably every day or every other day. And when you're logging in, you're instantly reminded, hey, so-and-so owes me money or so-and-so owes me money. And then also what that leads to, and this is a really good one, is it gives you some detailed reporting on your customers. So I'll give you a good example that's a true life story, but in the form of an example. We've had some notaries, and I've talked to a bunch of them this before, is you get into a situation where, you have a company that sends you a bunch of signing work and they do it last minute, and you hate it because it puts you, you're in a rush. They don't want to pay you enough money for it. And then you're always, you always feel like you're under the gun and you're starting to get upset with them. And then you think to yourself, you're like, listen, I'm ready to just stop doing work for these guys. Like, I'm so sick of this last minute stuff. So normally you would do it yourself. You'd say, okay, my gut feels it's just too last minute work, too much last minute work. I don't care. I'm just going to fire my customer. Well, with NotaryGadget, the first thing you should do is go and pull your customer report on them, because the customer report will tell you how much money you're actually making on them. And in many cases, you'll go back and you'll be like, wow, I made quite a bit of money on these guys. You're like, nope, they're okay. They can keep sending me last minute stuff. So, but that's all part of it. And vice versa. It works the other way around too, where, you are sick of a customer sending you last minute stuff, or they're becoming a pain to deal with, or making you jump through hoops. And then you pull the report on them and you're like, I'm not making any money on these guys. Every signing's really far away, or it's just, there's always fax backs or whatever else that you have to do for that particular customer that makes it not worth it to you. Well, at least you'll have, with NotaryGadget, you'll have some data to help back up that decision.
I love that. And I think that with data, we can make way better choices. It helps us optimize our business practices. And then obviously what you spoke to is it improves tax efficiency.
Mhm.
That's pretty powerful stuff. What made you what inspired NotaryGadget to even come around? Like what?
Yeah, so I'm actually not a notary. I feel like I'm one now after having after I think this is year 7 or 8 for NotaryGadget now. So it's been out for quite some time. But originally got started, I'm a software developer by nature, and I had a friend of mine who was a notary who was talking about one day about QuickBooks and how he would use QuickBooks to try to track all his notarial stuff. But he's like, it was, and I don't know, maybe I know a lot of things have changed since then, but he was like, yeah, it's kind of hard for me to do, and it kind of doesn't work the way that I need to do things because, as you know, notaries do things in a very, very predictable manner. Like there's a very laid out method to the way that you do things. There's an order of operations there that a typical accounting software doesn't work real well for. So he was, anyway, talking about this, QuickBooks in this particular case and how he didn't like the way that it worked. And he was explaining what it does. And I said, so this would be a pretty interesting concept to create something that would be specific to notaries. So I did a little bit of research, looked at the market size on it, and with his help, actually, he kind of was like the notary whisperer, if you will. And he was kind of, I would build a version of it, and he would start to use it, and he'd say, hey, this works good, this doesn't work good, blah 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 blah, and that's essentially how NotaryGadget really came to life. And the rest of it, I would love to take credit for it and say I had this grand master plan. I was the Facebook of NotaryGadget or whatever, but in all reality, that's not how it happened. We got out version 1, and once I got it out to the public and people started using it, we just started building on feedback. And that's our general approach to any of the software platforms that we do. That was one of our, we're on number 4 now, but we just build them at a base level, and then we wait for user feedback. So, and we know we kind of hit the 98% level, if you will, when we stop getting a ton of requests for stuff. And that's where we've been at NotaryGadget for probably over the last 4 or 5 years. Is every once in a while we'll get a random request that is for something usually very, very specific to maybe the way one person does things. But in all reality, the true credit goes to our users, because that's who's really helped shape NotaryGadget.
Awesome. Great tidbit there too. So I love that you were so responsive to the feedback and were able to do that. And so right now we're going to post a link down below the show notes here under the YouTube video where people can learn more. But what can you tell us a little bit about how your free trial works and what your pricing is?
Yeah, sure. So there's a couple things. So first of all, it's totally free to use for your first 15 signings. So you don't put a credit card in or anything like that. Our philosophy is, hey, we'll let you use it, and if it works out good for you and you enjoy using it, then you can pay for it after you've had 15 signings. So the cool part about the 15 signings is it's not a time-based one. So a lot of places you'll go, it'll be like, hey, you get a 15-day trial or something like that. If it takes you 5 years to get to 15 signings, cool. You can use it for free for 5 years, because we want you to earn some money to help show the value there. Now, also, the pricing on it is $9.99 per month if you pay monthly, or it's $99.95. So basically $100 if you pay yearly, or $10 a month if you pay monthly. And here's the greatest part about it is we offer a full guarantee where if it does, it's guaranteed to save you at least $100 a year. And if it doesn't, you can send us an email back and we'll issue a refund. So that's our promise to it. Because if you're tracking your notarial accident, I guarantee you it was going to save you more than $100.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds like it could save thousands of dollars. This is awesome, Steve. Steve, thank you so much for being with us today, and thank you for bringing a tool that helps us optimize our practices and really make this business that's still a little under the radar. Thanks for helping it stay viable, because with tax efficiency like this, we can really make a lifestyle out of being a notary public.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm glad to be here, and thanks for having me.